£1,000 sisters. Chris Combs hospitalized after shocking stroke. Brittany makes a heartfelt appeal. The summer sun had just begun peeking through the blinds of Chris Combs' modest Kentucky home. It was supposed to be another quiet day. Chris, known for his jovial personality and sarcastic humor, had been on a steady health journey alongside his sisters, Tammy and Amy Slayton. His mornings were usually filled with coffee, banter, and checking in with Brittany, his beloved wife, who had been his rock through all the ups and downs. But that morning, something felt off. Brittany recalls in a tearful confessional for the cameras, her voice trembling. Chris had been complaining of a headache for a couple days, but he kept brushing it off. Said it was just the heat or maybe he wasn't drinking enough water. But I knew something wasn't right. When I walked into the kitchen that morning, he was holding his coffee mug, but his hand was shaking. And then, he just dropped it. The mug shattered across the kitchen floor, and Chris slumped in his chair, mumbling incoherently. Panic set in immediately. Brittany screamed for her phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the quiet neighborhood. Paramedics rushed in, immediately recognizing the signs of a possible stroke. They worked quickly, securing oxygen, checking vitals, and lifting Chris onto the stretcher. Tammy and Amy arrived just as the ambulance doors were about to close. Amy, clutching her two young boys, was in shock. It didn't feel real. My big brother, the one who's always making jokes, always trying to keep us together, was just lying there, barely able to talk. I was terrified. The family followed the ambulance to the hospital, a whirlwind of fear and confusion swirling in their minds. When Chris was admitted to the ICU, doctors confirmed it. He had suffered an ischemic stroke, a blockage cutting off blood flow to part of his brain. The medical team immediately began clot-busting treatments, racing against time to minimize brain damage. The waiting room was tense. Tammy, fresh off her own massive health transformation, sat silently in her wheelchair, her hands clasped tightly. Amy paced, occasionally breaking into tears, while Brittany tried to remain strong for everyone else. The producers, who had been filming the family's day-to-day lives, quickly shifted focus to the developing crisis. Cameras rolled quietly in the background, capturing raw, unfiltered emotion. Brittany spoke softly to the crew during a break. I know this show is about weight loss and our family's journey, but right now, none of that matters. All I care about is Chris waking up, knowing who I am, knowing who his family is. I can't lose him. The episode cuts to flashbacks, Chris during earlier seasons, struggling with his weight, his high blood pressure, and his determination to qualify for bariatric surgery. Fans had watched him shed pounds, improve his stamina, and become an encouraging force for his sisters. But along the way, Chris had admitted to feeling the pressure of being a big brother figure not just in life, but on national television. That stress, combined with years of poor eating habits, had left his cardiovascular health vulnerable. Doctors had warned him multiple times, stroke risk was high if he didn't keep his blood pressure under control. By the second day, Chris was still in critical condition but stable. He had regained partial consciousness, though his speech was slurred and his right side appeared weak. The reality of the situation hit hard. Recovery wouldn't be overnight. Brittany stayed by his bedside, holding his hand, whispering encouragements. Tammy visited daily, despite her own mobility challenges, wheeling into the ICU and telling Chris stories to keep his spirits up. Amy brought the boys, letting them hold Chris's hand, a moment that brought him to tears. 3 days into the hospital stay, Brittany took to social media. Filmed in the hospital corridor, she appeared visibly exhausted but resolute. Hi everyone. I know y'all are used to seeing us laughing and cutting up on the show, but right now we're in the middle of something really hard. Chris had a stroke. He's fighting, and he's strong, but he's gonna need all the prayers and positive thoughts you can send. We're facing a long road ahead: therapy, medical bills, lifestyle changes. I'm asking from the bottom of my heart, keep Chris in your thoughts. Share your stories if you've been through something like this. Let him know he's not alone. The video spread quickly among fans. Within hours, thousands of comments poured in, messages of support, offers to help, and personal stroke survival stories. Hashtags like #PrayersForChris and #1000poundstrong began trending among the fanbase. By the end of the week, Chris began to show small but significant improvements. He could squeeze Brittany's hand on command. He could nod or shake his head to questions. And one day, he managed to whisper, "I love you," words that sent Brittany into tears. The doctors laid out a plan. Months of rehabilitation, speech therapy, and physical therapy would be required. But they were optimistic. The family started making changes immediately. Amy and Tammy began meal prepping healthier foods not just for themselves, but for Chris when he came home. Brittany began researching stroke survivor support groups in Kentucky. One particularly moving scene captured the entire family gathered around Chris's hospital bed. Amy had just brought homemade chicken soup, approved by the dietitian, and Tammy had printed out a poster filled with fan messages from social media. Chris, struggling to speak, pointed to the poster and managed to say, "Family." Brittany leaned in, tears running down her cheeks. "That's right, baby. You've got your family, and you've got the whole world rooting for you." Off camera, Brittany admitted she was scared not just of losing Chris, but of how their lives were about to change forever. Stroke recovery meant possible permanent disabilities, a mountain of medical expenses, and the emotional toll of watching her husband fight for every movement, every word. In a confessional, she said, "We've always been a team. Through the show, through weight loss, through family drama, it's always been me and Chris against the world. But now, I have to be his strength. And I'm gonna be. Because he'd do the same for me." In an unexpected twist, Tammy, often portrayed as the stubborn, hard-to-please sister, became a constant source of comfort. She encouraged Chris during rehab sessions, cracking jokes and reminding him that he was tougher than any obstacle. Amy, juggling motherhood and filming, brought lightness into the hospital room with her boys, making Chris laugh even when it hurt to move. This united front didn't go unnoticed by fans, who flooded social media with praise for the family's resilience. Weeks later, Chris was discharged to a rehab facility. Cameras followed as he began intense therapy, lifting small weights, practicing walking with assistance, and relearning how to form words clearly. Every milestone was celebrated: the first step, the first full sentence, the first time he could lift his fork without help. Brittany remained by his side, often cheering from the corner of the therapy room, tears in her eyes. In the season finale, Chris recorded a short message for fans. His speech was slower, but every word was filled with gratitude. "Thank y'all, for every prayer, every message, y'all kept me going. This ain't the end of my story. I'm gonna keep fighting. And if you're going through something like this, don't give up." Brittany sat next to him, holding his hand, smiling through tears. The final shot fades to the family gathered in Chris and Brittany's backyard months later, grilling healthy food, laughing, and hugging. Chris, still walking with a cane, raises a glass of water in a toast. To family, to health, and to second chances.